Okay, we are okay. I don't know what okay is. Okay, we are on 11b1. Okay, just interestingly enough, we ended the class with this moment where Eli Kohen says to Shmuel, like, my sons are like off, or they're not what they could have been. That should happen to you and more. You know, if you don't tell me what you know. He knew that Shmuel had a prophecy for him. He knew that Shmuel was withholding that prophecy from him. Remember, Shmuel was brought to Eli when he was just the young, littlest kid, by Chana, as soon as he was weaned. So he knew this kid inside out. He could tell that Shmuel was hiding something, and he knew that Shmuel was a prophet already. So he says, "You got to tell me," and because he made this curse al Tanai, so therefore it resulted in it coming true, as we've said already, right? Kilat chacham, right? Al filu al Tanai, nitkayen, still comes true. So that happened to Shmuel. So I mentioned that it's a shame missing Harry Towel. Why? The name Harry Tawil is, they always say Me'elia Kohen. Why they call Tawil? Tawil means long life. They were blessed that if they engage in Torah and in mitzvot, right, then it should be as a foil and as a protection from this curse that had been placed on the children of Eli. So you always say Tawil Me'elia Kohen, as an extra thing to knock it out, especially when you're making a Misha Berach that they went up to the Torah or that they know donated money. But that was the reason for the name. So what is amazing to me is that you find an expression in the Gemara, you find a conversation in the Torah from 2,000 years ago, if it's in the Gemara. From Eliah Kohen, it's almost 3,000 years ago, right? And then there's a guy sitting right next to you on the bench whose name is Tawil because of that story. How nuts is that? Imagine, like, my name is Fari. Why? Because we were the people that found the rock that Moshe hit, and we turned it into irrigation systems around the world. The name Fari means stone irrigation. Like, nuts. That's what, so it's a shame we didn't have Harry present for this. I think he's also away for this class, which is specifically mentioning his history. Okay, let's begin. Gemara and Yud Aleph Amud Bet. 11b1, right? 11b2. Okay, let's start again. 11b1. One more time. Rabbi Yehuda Amarav says, because this is the bit that we need. Nidui al tenai tzarich hafara. Whenever you have an excommunication, okay, which is done on condition, it still needs to be undone. All right? That means that the reason why it needs to be undone is because it's considered as if it was done. It landed. Okay? So a nidui al tanai needs to be undone. Minalan, where do we learn it from? Mi Yehuda. Because by Yehuda it says, if I do not bring your son back, and I will have sinned to you all the days. And the Gemara says that we put together Reuven and Yehuda and the blessings of Moshe. Why are we saying Reuven, Yechi Reuven Yamut, and then Vezot Yehuda? Why are we saying that? Why are we putting those two together? It should be Reuven, Shimon, and Levi, and then Yehuda. We're putting them together to tell you that one was helping the other. Because Yehuda's bones were rattling around in his coffin the whole time they were in the desert, because they were all taken from Egypt. All the Shvatim were taken to be buried in Eretz Israel. And they were rattling all that time until Moshe Rabbeinu, Ad She'amad Moshe, Bekesh Alav Rahamim, Moshe asked for forgiveness from him. Mi garam leReuven shiodeh, who caused Yehuda to Reuven in order to be able to admit his mistake? That was Yehuda, because by Yehuda confessing, Reuven learned the way. Vizot Yehuda. So is that the case? This is the way it should be for Yehuda, who was the origin source for the Teshuvah of Reuven. Reuven's bones are not rattling. Why should Yehuda's? And then the Gemara says that on each thing that was then forgiven, it was forgiven piece by piece. So, okay, fine. So the bones, the limbs that had come apart in the coffin, reunited, kind of fused back together, and they stopped moving around. But still, Yehuda was not allowed into the heavenly yeshiva. So he prayed the next step, right? Shema Hashem Kol Yehuda. Listen to the voice of Yehuda was the first thing. Then he wasn't allowed into the yeshiva shel mala. Bring him to the nation. And then he was allowed in. But then still he couldn't do what he needed to do. He could not remember the back and forth, the flow of the halachic, the Torah discussion, which is what they do in Yeshiva Shema. They're studying the words of God. They're connecting to Hashem. So he was excluded from that. So he introduced another request. Yadav Rav Lo. Let him, what's it called? Let his hands, be enough for him. So he'll be able to learn along with them. That was granted. He couldn't answer the questions that they were asking him. Moshe continued until finally he was completely back in. Now, there's something I just want to point out. It's so interesting to me. Let's just hit pause. Moshe Rabbeinu offers what seems to be a good point with regards to Yehuda. Yehuda was the one that taught Teshuvah. If Reuven's bones are not rattling around, why should Yehuda be worse off than Reuven? Okay? But interestingly enough, then Moshe needs to ask on every single step. Why doesn't that request bring all of these with it? Ostensibly, Reuven was allowed into the Yeshiva Shemala, did know the back and forth of the Shakla V'Tarya, did know how to answer the questions that were being lobbed at him in his positions in Torah, right? So what, I don't understand. Why was that not good enough of a defense for Yehuda, and only the other thing, only with regards to the rattling around? So I think that there's an interesting answer to this. With regards to the claim, Reuven also suggested something. He said, "My sons should die." Remember, if I don't bring them back. So it's only Reuven and Yehuda. No, Reuven makes a suggestion that Yaakov turns down. Then Yehuda makes a suggestion. So the two people in our protagonists in this story are the only ones that make suggestions to Yaakov, basically cursing at themselves. Okay? So the Pasuk is saying, the Gemara is saying that if Reuven was forgiven and Yehuda, he learned something from Yehuda, then at the very least we see that Yehuda should have the same thing that we know about Reuven. Moshe did not know the rest of these things about Reuven, so he couldn't draw that Kal Vachomer. What he experienced, he could ask on, and that they allowed. To me, what's so interesting is that for most of us, when a person is undergoing a very difficult situation, the process of our prayer is we just pray for the thing. But really, that's not how tefillah works. Like in the Berachav Refa'enu, we say, Hashem should heal, chol machovenu, chol makotenu, chol, right? Chol tachalenu, chol machovenu, chol makotenu. What are all those descriptions?
All your sufferings.
But what do we say? My sickness and my pain and my, what is it? And I was explaining once to somebody, I said, when someone's not well, so then they're taking a medicine and they've done a surgery, right? There's the sickness that the person needs to be gone. Then there's the fact that the person has had something done to them, medicine, surgery, that they need to heal from. Now they have wounds because of that sickness. Bar minan, a person can get certain type of sickness. It's not just the fact that he has that sickness anymore. Now the rest of the body is shutting down because, as a symptom of that. So that's, the pasuk, the tefillah is including this and this. And then the pasuk gives, the tefillah gives it a whole other, chol machovenu, all of the pain. Pain is also separate to the broken down kidney or liver or whatever. Or pain could be from the medication that's solving the problem. So in prayer, a person needs to be able to be specific and break down all the various things that he wants. And part of the reason for that is that the more a person sees the component parts of what he needs and gives that to HaKadosh Baruch Hu's power, the more humble they are, the more they're asking, the more they feel like a child who's being mitchanen lefnei rabo. And that makes their tefillah that much more powerful. And we're seeing that also over here from the step-by-step that Moshe needed to get Yehuda, so to speak, out of jail on all of these things. Let's continue. The Gemara continues. Yes?
Can you tell me what page we're on?
We're on 11b2.
Thank you.
Hazaku Baruch. Iba Elahu. The Gemara asks a question. B'mitat kulanu chozer, or dil b'mitat echad mehen. Do all of them have to die? We mentioned a bunch of different types of Kohen Gadols, at least 3. Do all of them have to die, or is it enough for one of them to die? Because when the Torah gives you all these 3 different people that when they die, he goes out, one might have imagined that it's all. Tashma, the Gemara says, come and learn. Nigmar dino belo Kohen Gadol. What happens if the guy, when they ruled on his case, they were in between Kohen Gadols. No one had yet been appointed. So, but the old guy died. Eno yotze misham leolam. He doesn't leave Galut forever.
Because that means there's a bad time in our time.
What do you mean?
Because if we don't, there's like a void. Yeah, there's a void in Israel at that time. No Kohen Gadol. So that guy gets extra punished.
So, but why should that be the case? Why should he be punished? Because we don't have a Kohen Gadol. The answer is, come on.
The Kohen Gadol who was serving,
Yeah.
when he did his mistake, is somehow culpable for what he did by not praying enough in the right way, etc. And since he's already dead, then there isn't this subsequent kapara of that Kohen's death while you're in the galut to free you.
So, Odapam, why am I being punished? Because there's no Kohen here right now.
You're the Kohen who quote unquote slipped
Yeah.
when you had your accident
Yeah.
was partially responsible, and his death is supposed to atone for your partial accident. You get out. He's already dead, so there's no atonement of a Kohen Gadol who was alive when you had your accident.
But again, so what? So what? Why is it my problem? I did the same act as that guy. He gets out at a certain time. I get out. In our actions, we should be punished for our actions.
But each had a different Kohen Gadol.
Even still, we each did the same thing. How can it be that both of us are being punished for negligence and we have drastically different sentencing? One guy is for lifetime, forever, and the other guy is going to get out in 2 years. Heck, when the Kohen Gadol winds up dying.
You need the Kohen Gadol's death to finish your atonement.
How is that fair?
That's the rule.
So one way is saying that's the rule, tough nuggies. I want you to think, what do we learn?
The death of the Kohen Gadol could be held the responsibility of the guy who was gone in Galut. Meaning maybe he could have died because he made prayers or he contributed to the death of the Kohen, and therefore he should have...
How did he contribute? The accidental murderer contributed to the death of Kohen Gadol?
He died simultaneously.
He died before the Nigmar Adin. Or, by the way, it might have even been before he even killed.
So there's
But-
no Kohen Gadol alive.
None. In this case,
that takes away my argument.
yes. You mean because he wasn't even there?
There was no Kohen Gadol.
There was no Kohen Gadol.
Who
could have slipped.
faltered.
Yeah,
that led
in not
to
praying.
The accidental death.
Yes. What are we missing, guys? I want to get where I'm going with this. What is the source of the concept of accidental murders?
Insufficient prayer by the Kohen Gadol.
No. That's the deficiency of protection. Why is this happening to me? What do we learn? HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes a person who caused an accidental death and deserves to be in Galut, and he sets him up that this should happen to him. The guy at the bottom of the ladder is a guy who'd killed intentionally. We had no proof. So this guy winds up having someone fall on it. That means that this whole process is a designed process by HaKadosh Baruch Hu for punishment.
And
The
this
answer
guy-
is,
and the answer
so
this
is the
guy.
timing.
Right, and this guy
Oh.
is destined for all time.
Since HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted this, Hashem could have made him fall off the ladder 2 years earlier or 2 years later. He made sure that it's exactly in the time where there's no serving Kohen Gadol. Why? So that he'll stay in Galut forever.
Which is
And
his
And that's
punishment.
exactly. And now again, we
His
still
Goldilocks.
don't know why God wanted him specifically that, but once we look at the Gemara of Pundak Echad, we understand why this guy winds up. And technically, you could ask the question again in reverse. How could it be that in one scenario, a guy gets a Kohen Gadol that dies a month after that he goes there, another guy gets a Kohen Gadol that lasts Yab Yochanan Kohen Gadol 80 years?
Deserves
Hashem.
The answer is Hashem makes sure that you kill during the reign of Yochanan Kohen Gadol, and you're there for 80 years. And the other guy kills at the end of Yochanan Kohen Gadol's rule, and the other guy kills at the beginning of the new guy's rule, lasts 1 year. All of the timing is as much arranged as is the characters.
And since Hashem does everything for a kindness, the guy that has to stay in for life, maybe the Goel Adam is so crazy that if he got out a month later, he would kill him. So this is Hashem's kindness to the accidental killer.
Either in the real world or in the world of kapara. Right. Yes, he maybe needed that much more. Morris, yes.
Aren't you saying essentially that the guy who gets the longer term, because it's predetermined and it's fixed and it's intentional, the gravity of his negligence was more severe than the guy who gets 2 years?
No,
So you have to make that argument necessarily?
I don't have to make any argument. In other words, basically, it might even be that the reason why this guy needs that kapara has got nothing to do with this. It might be the guy needs all sorts of kapara. Hashem arranges that this happens with him, and he arranges as well the term of the sentence by ensuring. I mean, you think about this. Forget Bet Din for a second. Let's say you have a guy who gets sentenced in court on March 1st. Another guy gets sentenced in court on March 8th. In the week between those two people, they passed a law that says, that anyone who kills in such and such a way doesn't go to jail. We are ma'aminim b'nei ma'aminim. That guy is going to sit now for life. This guy is going to walk out tomorrow morning. Now, part of the arrangement of that time is also from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because that's what emunah means, that God is arranging all of these things min hashamayim. So the same way we're seeing that in our day and age. You have one guy who goes to get a lawyer, and the lawyer that would have gotten him off, best lawyer, so couldn't take his case because he was busy with another case. He got inferior legal protection. This guy thinks it's because he couldn't get the lawyer. In Shamayim, Hashem is saying that's why you couldn't get the lawyer, because you needed to be for kapara, for this, for other things, for a combination of reasons. You needed to go away to Rikers Island for however long to be able to get kapara. So in Shamayim, there would be a different thing. Or so something else wouldn't happen to you or to your family, as you pointed out, the Goel Adam. Okay, let's continue.
Can that guy get out if the next Kohen passes away?
No.
Never.
No. Because it's not his Kohen Gadol. It's not the Kohen Gadol of the killer, of the act.
When would that? How long would there ever have been a void of no Kohen Gadol?
I don't know.
Because don't we have reserves?
Even if it was one
I don't know. Reserves that we have, we were talking about this yesterday, were for Yom Kippur.
Right. If he wakes up and you said he wasn't.
But that would be specifically for Yom Kippur, okay? But they would have to have served. If they did not serve, the fact that there was a reserve, that's just potential Kohen Gadol material. You're not yet a Kohen Gadol until either you've been anointed or you've been garbed. Garbed, yeah.
Take Jonah's next question, though. Why not delay the trial by 1 day so there's a sitting Kohen Gadol?
So again, technically, that if the case was that it was, that the guy that they could do that or that they knew that, they might do that, but they might not know that, or they might not know if it will be for many days. Also, the case that comes to Bet Din, they don't just willy-nilly just kind of push it off. The case is in front of us, we have to rule on it. So we can't just say, if we move it to here, there'll be a more favorable result. We have to judge the case as and when it comes. All right? Now, what I don't understand is if we decide that the Kohen Gadol is the Kohen Gadol of my action, if that's really what's going on here, then it wouldn't make... Why is the Gemara tying it to Nigmar Adin? The Gemara should tie it to the actual act, not just to the end of the court case. But the Gemara clearly says, Nigmar Dino Belo Kohen Gadol. It doesn't say he killed Belo Kohen Gadol, indicating seemingly that if he killed without a Kohen Gadol, but the Nigmar Dino was without the Kohen Gadol, that might be...
Killing in year miklat while the Kohen Gadol was his Kohen Gadol.
You mean first time round?
Right, he runs away right
But that's
away.
sketch item. That's sketch goy adam. Yeah, but you don't get out for that.
Right.
But you know why?
Court case.
Because right now it's just temporary protection.
You haven't been a judge.
You haven't been, you're not here on purpose. It's like
you're acting
a
president.
guy who goes to Rikers Island for the tour and then a week later comes back as a resident. The fact that he got the get out of jail free card and used it, at that point, it's not going to help. Okay, we'll come back to this as well a little bit later on this idea of how we look at this. Why do we look at some things by the time of the act and some things by the time of the Gemar Din, which is the coming down of the gavel? By the way, if you remember also, we had something else that was dependent on the gavel. Anyone remember?
Yes, before he could run out before
The running and the admitting was also on Nigmar Dino. Excellent. But there it makes sense. Why? Because what we're deciding is, did the guy admit it to the court? Right? It's not dependent on the act, whether you admitted it. It's dependent on, did the court case close before you admitted it? In which case, it's not an admission. Either way, point is, the Gemara is in the middle of bringing a proof. How you doing, Rachel? Feel good? The point here is something very, very different. We asked the question, is it one of them dying or all of them dying? The Gemara now brought this point, and the Gemara said, it says, Nigmar Dino, below Kohen Gadol, he's there forever. Who needs a Kohen Gadol? What if one of the other guys dies?
one of the three.
One of the other ones. Right? Very fascinating parry and thrust here. Because I'm sure all of you are already thinking what the answer is. The imita, says the Gemara, if it's true that you could get off with just one of them, lehader bebe dahanech, let him get out with one of the death of one of the other ones. What's the Gemara answer? Bedeleka. Okay. We're talking about where there isn't. You want to check if she's okay? Yeah, bedeleka, if there isn't another one. So, in other words, if this Mishnah, if this Tashma, right, was... Yeah, if everyone was bedeleka, if there was none others, so then obviously you're not going to get out, and that doesn't prove anything. Okay, let's continue. Says the Gemara. Okay, says the Gemara. Mishinigmai dino, says the Mishnah. Mishinigmai dino met Kohen Gadol. If this is exactly where our Tashma was from, Mishinigmai dino, if after the Gemar Din the Kohen Gadol dies, hare ze eno goleh. Flip side, okay? What happens if they rule, go to Galut, do not pass go. As soon as they do that, the Kohen Gadol who came to watch the case is like, he has a heart attack and he dies.
That's
After the Din.
But he's
not yet,
Gavel comes down, he dies.
But he's not yet in the...
Not yet in the Galut, ostensibly.
goes free.
Okay? Hareze eno goleh, no Galut.
Goes free.
Yeah.
Because you just said
By the way,
that.
that doesn't make sense to me. This does not make sense to me. No. There we talked about where the Kohen Gadol was not alive or even in existence as a Kohen Gadol until after the Gemar Din. So there is no Kohen Gadol of that moment for him to get out for.
Even more so, the Kohen Gadol's alive at the time of judgment, and then he dies. Of course, he would go free.
So what's the reason why you would imagine he would not go free?
Because he didn't get to.
He didn't get to Galut yet. The pasuk seems to say that he stays in Galut until the Kohen Gadol dies. If he didn't even get to Galut yet, and the Kohen Gadol dies, in other words, we look at it as a get out of jail free card, not a don't go to jail free. Why is it a kol sheken?
If that's the right word. Because he has two ways of being protected. One is Ir Miklat, and the other is death of the Kohen. He got the second one.
I don't know how reading the Pesukim in a straightforward way one would see that. The Pasuk says the guy goes to Galut and he stays there until the Kohen Gadol dies. If you did not yet get to Galut, then how could you use that get out of jail free card? Your understanding like it's like a joker. Like it could be used in multiple ways. But in the Pesukim it says you stay there until, indicating that it gets you out.
There's an understood phrase before your pasuk.
Yeah.
This gentleman is due to go free, to be protected from being killed by the Goal Adam. And now read your pasuk.
Yeah, and
He's going to be protected from being killed by the Goal Adam.
yeah. Now the pasuk says, and you go to Galut.
Until
That happens.
The until can modify the first.
That's a
phrase.
very difficult reading. That's a very difficult reading. By the way, we're going to see. Obviously, that's the case. But how do we get there? How do we understand that when the pasuk says clearly that when you go to Galut, you get out of Galut from this? We'll see in just a minute. And the word you use, koshken, is very close. Says the Gemara, Im ad shelo nigmar dino met kohen gadol. What happens if before the Gemar din, ad shelo nigmar dino met kohen gadol? Okay? And in between, before he even gets the case before the gavel comes down, minu acher tachtav. They put another one in his place. Ula'acha miken nigmar dino. And then the court case is closed. Choser b'mitato shel sheni. He waits until the death of the second one. Okay? So in other words, no, but that's also chidush. Why? Because in the act itself, this Kohen Gadol was there. He was alive. Now he died before the Gemar Dino. According to your logic, that the Kohen Gadol not only gets me out of Galut, but protects me from Galut. Why shouldn't he protect me from a Galut that hasn't been ruled any more than a Galut that hasn't been fulfilled?
Because there hasn't been a ruling yet.
Again, I understand, but you'd have to differentiate. If it's going to get me out of a Galut that I haven't served, why can't it get me out of Galut that hasn't been handed down?
Because maybe you're going to be found to be a
the
full murderer.
So if I'm found to be a full murderer, we'll have that conversation. But if now, and indeed, which I've been found to be considered a accidental murderer, so why doesn't he get me off? All of these things are going to have a logic. Okay, this is classic, quintessential Gemara. It's very, very beautiful, and each bit is kind of parsed like as if we're slicing with a Japanese. I don't know what those Jinzu knife. Okay, says the Gemara. Choser mitato shel sheni. He goes back when the second one dies. Nigmar dino below kohen gadol. What happens if he has a serving? The gavel comes down, and there's no kohen gadol whatsoever. What happens in such a case? Now, I'm just going to skip for a second to the end. Eni yotze misham leolam. The halacha is you never get out. That was what we just saw. Then the Gemara gives a second case, also with the same ruling. V'haore kohen gadol. What happens if you killed by mistake an actual kohen gadol? You killed the sitting kohen gadol, or v'kohen gadol she'harag, or a kohen gadol who himself killed
By accident.
Eni yotze misham leolam. All of those cases by accident. Eni yotze misham leolam.
Even though the judgment can be 2 weeks later, and there would have been a sitting Kohen Gadol replacement.
Sorry?
Even if the case was 2 weeks later, and they had already appointed a replacement Kohen Gadol.
Even if
If the Kohen Gadol kills Bishogeg somebody, none of the people go free ever?
he doesn't go free.
Oh, he doesn't go free ever?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought.
Okay, he does not go free ever. Okay. Now,
Or if you kill.
and again, we're gonna see exactly.
You don't go free ever.
Or if you kill Kohen Gadol accidentally, okay? Ve'enu yotzeh, okay, lo le'edut mitzvah. So now we've discussed a person who goes out, doesn't go out. Now the Mishnah branches off, okay? Enu yotzeh, this guy who's in the Galut, he does not leave the city. Lo le'edut mitzvah, not if, let's say he has, Bedin needs him to come testify for a mitzvah. What would be an example of a testifying for a mitzvah? Famous example? Rosh Chodesh, excellent. V'lo le'edut mamon. Not if someone has, they need him to come rule on a case, give testimony on a case of money. You know, there's a big fraud case, there's a big disagreement on a real estate deal. This guy was there in the room. He's not allowed to leave to do the testimony.
It doesn't have to be a giant case. It can also be 50 shekels. The court doesn't distinguish between big cases.
No, I'm just saying, even in a scenario where his testimony would make a huge difference, he's still not allowed to leave. V'lo le'edut nefashot. Even if there's a capital court case, and the person in the court case is going to die without his testimony or not die when he deserves to.
Standing idly by with your
Standing idly by. What's it called? A person's not allowed to withhold testimony. As a mitzvah to create a Rosh Chodesh to come to the Beit Din. None of those things make him come out. Va'afilu Yisrael tzrichim lo. Even if the Jewish people need him, the whole of the Jewish people need him, he doesn't leave.
So there's no exceptions.
No exceptions. Va'afilu sa'at tzava Yisrael ki Yoav ben Tzruya. What if he's the general of the whole Jewish people, like Yoav ben Tzruya? Nobody like him. There's nothing we could do. We need this guy. He's the one who runs the armies. Eno yotze misham leolam. He never leaves. The only reason why he would leave is if the Kohen Gadol dies. Shneimar, like it says, Asher nas shama, that this person, he runs there. What does it mean? Shama, sham tehe dirato. That is where he lives. Sham tehe mitato. There will be his death. Sham tehe kivurato. There will be his burial. Unless, obviously, a person has a way out because the Kohen Gadol dies, in which case, we let you out of jail free. Now, I have a funny scenario. Ready for this?
Why does he have to be buried there? Why can't he be buried in Jerusalem or somewhere else?
That's the limud. You would think that the concept of galut is that you're going there because otherwise the guy's going to kill you. If I leave now, right, I'm not in danger of dying, I'm already dead. Why do I need to be buried there? The answer is because it says Asher Yanus Shama. Shama indicates that is his place. Wow. Okay? It's his place to run, it's his place to die, it's his place to be buried. Now, we're obviously seeing in the Mishnah already that there's more to Ir Miklat than meets the eye. Because the Pasuk seems to be saying, you got to run there. You know why? Because maybe the blood of the Goel Adam is going to boil. And then, well, you know, that's what the Pasuk makes it sound. So if, let's say, I'm not worried about that because I'm now being buried, why can't I leave the Ir Miklat? You see clearly the Pasuk says no. We also asked another question. What about in a scenario where there's no Goel Adam? He's got nothing to be afraid of. Does he go to Galut? Hard to say no. Why? I said this to Jack last week, and Jack got the answer. No, because it's kapara. I need the kapara for inadvertently murdering someone. This is the kapara. So let's say no one's chasing me. I still need the kapara. So we'll see. We'll come back to all of these cases, and now it's time for mincha.
If he goes to court and they find him to be an accidental murderer and he doesn't go, he elects not to go to the Ir Miklat.
Yeah.
Can the court force him to go?
We'll see. We'll see on that too. Number one, also, and let me ask you, is he doing a sin by not going? I'm electing, look, I'm black belt, I'm electing not to go. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see the answers to all those Bez Hashem.